Good morning, everyone. We are going to reconvene the session that was suspended yesterday afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Gordzinski.
Welcome.
So, welcome. I know, we're going to have to figure out the times. Good morning, everyone. I think we left off yesterday with my remarks, but I'm wondering, I don't want to put you on the spot too early, Mr. Connor, but you had a technology meeting this morning, and so would you like to give a brief update on the committee?
I would, and we had a great introduction from Stephen and his viewpoint about innovation and technology, especially innovation, and what he wants to do in VDOT. We also had an update on our security with our data portal. I'd like to have a, Madam Secretary, a full briefing. I think the full board might want to, will benefit with a full briefing on our data portal and the amount of data we're collecting and the types of data we're collecting and how it can help us make better decisions here. So I'd like to somehow put that on the agenda at some point.
We get that on the work session for next month, please?
We had a huge conversation about leveraging our 3,800 miles of fiber, much of which is dark, and how we can use that fiber, not only do we have to inventory the fiber, but work with other agencies to use that asset to leverage other assets, private and public, so that we can deploy broadband all over the state, and especially in rural areas that are hard to get. Really, I think, make a major push for this governor to deploy broadband so that we can really create the new Virginia economy all over this state. There's no reason why we can't do that. So we had a very good conversation, the first of many conversations on how our P3 office is tackling that now. But a lot of excitement there. I think at some point we'll have a larger discussion in front of the CTB with you and other members. But we're going to be taking that up again next month as well. But a lot of good stuff going on there. Thank you.
Great. Anything from anyone else who serves on the committee you'd like to add?
No, just a good session, and I look forward to reporting in the next meeting.
Any questions? Okay, so it leaves me with my report. Just as an overview, as I was, going before committee hearings in the General Assembly, and in various interviews, even before the transition policy team, which was led by John Milliken and Amy Perrin-Seibert, I did say that what a great opportunity it is for me to be able to be in this position at this point in time with transportation. And I certainly acknowledged and continue to acknowledge the transformations that took place under the McAuliffe administration, Secretary Lane, many legislators in the House and the Senate, and to this board, because there's been so much that has changed as far as accountability and transparency in identifying funding and actually completing projects. I have laughed with folks that we actually have a 6-year plan now, rather than a 20 and 30-year plan where we're kind of moving numbers on a balance sheet. We're actually completing projects. And Commissioner, the person who held this position before you, had said that the orange cone is now our new state flower. So for all of those reasons, it was exciting for me to be able to even be considered for this position. But I really do believe that we can build on those accomplishments in 3 key areas, if not more. But one being economic development that Ms. DeTonk brought up yesterday. I really do believe that working not only within the urban crescent, but what I call the heart of Virginia as well, to really look for those opportunities of tying transportation decisions to economic competitiveness, which exists in Northern Virginia, Hampton Roads, Richmond, but also in Blacksburg, Petersburg, Lynchburg, in many different realms, and the important part that transportation plays in those decisions. So I would like to work much more in, I think, making those connections. Secondly, as I mentioned yesterday, as far as execution, we've made a lot of commitments on this board to some very exciting projects, and how we deliver them with excellence, I think, is going to be a tremendous part of our what distinguishes this board. And so having Commissioner Britch with us and the team across the board in every agency, I think is just going to be paramount going forward. And I think we've made some very good decisions about leaders on a number of projects. And so I think working with you and through all of this is going to be very, very important. And finally, with embracing innovation, which I know has been a priority of many people on this board, not just in solving transportation problems, which is, I think, so important, but also making sure that commerce around the world knows that Virginia is open for business, that whether we're talking about unmanned systems, coordinated quarters, the data portal, economic development and research opportunities at the spaceport, just tying all these pieces together with innovation, I think is going to be a very exciting part of our tenure. So with those, and, you know, I laugh because when the governor and I hear legislators say their top priority is jobs and creating the new Virginia economy, I always think transportation, you know, because we're the system upon which that new Virginia economy is built. And that is the tie-in, that supporting our workforce, our business expansion, business investment, that's what we support with a 21st century multimodal transportation system. So anyway, I just thank you all for, you know, joining with me and perhaps helping me expand in those particular areas. As you know, my major work has been done working with Jennifer Mitchell and Nick Donahue, among others, and for the WMATA legislation, and I do believe we're in a good position, having two bills, one in the House and one in the Senate. We will continue to work with the legislature and Governor Northam's administration to make sure we move that forward. 81, I think we are recognizing as a Commonwealth, really deserves the attention in looking at funding and some targeted investments. And by doing that, it really does alleviate some of those very limited dollars within the Stanton District, the Bristol District, the Salem District, that actually go to try to working on 81. So if we could focus on that quarter, it actually opens up more dollars in your districts as well. I did want to let you know that I had the opportunity to go with the governor to the White House for the announcement of the infrastructure package last week. You know, Governor Northam is certainly very supportive and appreciative of all the attention and effort being made in infrastructure, which I think is noted all across our country. We went, the governor did make a case for the work going on at the port in finding the investments to continue making it the deepest port on the East Coast. And many of those economic opportunities that are available there. We continue to share our concerns with the package and with the 2019 budget as far as making sure that the Federal Highway Trust Fund is fully funded beyond 2020, because that's the platform where we build our 6-year plan, and it's actually how we're able, I think, to negotiate such smart deals with public-private partnerships, because we bring that public option to the table, and we know exactly what we need in a transportation system and moving people through the corridor. And we're also concerned going forward that as this infrastructure package is unfolded, they're looking for new revenue from the states. And we had a package in 2013, which really created nearly $1 billion of new revenue for transportation in Virginia, if you include Northern Virginia and Hampton roads. It was about $600 million statewide. But if you only look back 3 years, which is what the proposal is on the table right now, all that new investment doesn't count for Virginia. So for states like us, who actually were the leaders in trying to identify and actually create new sources of revenue, that is a very big piece for us. So among other concerns, I think that those were probably two of our biggest. I'm going to ask Secretary Donahue, was there anything else that we wanted to at least share as far as concerns going forward?
I think just also the Trump budget proposal, which again, why it's not like the Virginia budget that's actually a piece of legislation, it's more a concept document, also contained, I think, some cuts to Amtrak, proposed to eliminate the Tiger program, and then also would have reduced the federal transit New Start program, which are all things the Commonwealth has relied on for substantial funding and support over the past few years. And so if that were to be enacted, there would be some serious ramifications for Virginia.
Yes. So as we're working through the budgets and the federal impact on Virginia, just wanted to let you know the priority. Yes, sir.
Are they seeking our guidance on how to structure and run P3s? Just had to say.
No.
I'm saying, okay, just a question.
But thank you for asking. I did want you to know, as far as the port is concerned, because that is a huge economic asset for us, as you all mentioned, as is Wallops Island, that, the port is continuing to maintain its operations, maintaining its profitability, as it's going through a $670 million expansion right now. So it's very exciting with the port going forward. And in DMV, I did want you to know that Real ID is progressing. DMV got approval from Homeland Security on its continued status report, and that will begin to roll out in October 1st of this year. It needs to be completed. We all need to be getting Real IDs by October 1st of 2020. So, and I think with that, that's pretty much, does anybody have any questions for me? Okay, so Mr. Grozinski, anything from yesterday?
No, I think we covered everything.
Okay, so then I think I'm going to find my notes from Ms. Mathis, and I believe we'll be able to move into our action meeting. Do we have anyone signed up to speak this morning?
I haven't seen anybody, but they don't have to sign up.
Would anyone Good morning.
Joe Lurch with the Virginia Association of Counties. I actually didn't plan to speak this morning, but I have to admit I went to the CTB Innovation Subcommittee this morning, and I want to express to you VACO's support for the effort of looking at how we can leverage this asset to help bring broadband and internet access to unserved areas. And we would like to work with you. A lot of our counties have experience in putting fiber in the ground and then working through the PPEA process, trying to get the last mile. So that's something we would love to work with you on. And somewhat related to that, there is two bills working its way through the General Assembly, Senate Bill 823 and House Bill 1427, that are somewhat related in that they cap what both VDOT and localities can charge for the placement of a structure, a wireless or a wireless support structure. Anything up to 50 feet, only $1,000 a year. 50 to 120 feet, $2,000 a year. Anything over 120 feet, $3,000 a year. And why I think that's important as it relates to the asset of the fiber in the ground, at those rates, you may come across a situation where a wireless infrastructure provider may put up a whole line of poles and then just backhaul the data. And so that may be a concern for how you want to leverage that asset moving forward. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Secretary, that's one of the, I had a good talk with Joe last week about this, and I think as Morteza and the P3 office put this together, it would do well to consult with VACO and VML, and also get our arms around all the legislation related to broadband and where we can fit into that, because there are a lot of moving parts, and I understand that the governor's appointed for lack of a better term, a broadband czar, sort of get her arms around all this, and I've encouraged Morteza to be part of that effort, because there's just a lot of moving parts, and they're all, as we've said before, connected, and we ought to be part of that conversation.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. And you weren't here yesterday when I did let everyone know that we are moving forward with creating the Office of Innovation within the Office of Intermodal Planning and Investment, so through Nick Donahue's office. So that will be another place, I think, that we'll be able to house some of this. You are always asking the question, who owns this? So I think that's an important piece as well. And thank you for offering to work on this issue with us. Good morning, Mr. Pollard.
I'm Secretary, members of the CTB. I'm Trip Pollard with the Southern Environmental Law Center. Unfortunately, I couldn't be here with you all yesterday because I was busy with General Assembly, but there were two big items on your agenda I just wanted to briefly weigh in on. First was the General Assembly, and as you just mentioned, there are a lot of really critical issues over there right now. Top issue for Southern Environmental Law Center this session on transportation is the Metro funding. We're part of the Metro Now Coalition with a number of business groups as well as nonprofits working for that funding, and I hope we are successful in getting the full amount that we need for Metro. It's important for environment, it's important for our communities, and it's important for the economic development. So you have a whole coalition of some people who don't always see eye to eye who have come together to support that funding, and I hope we can get there. Unfortunately, the state transit funding for capital is not apparently going forward, and that is something that we really need to have this body devote some additional attention to. Mr. Williams and his committee came forward with some good ideas, but it looks like that's not going to be funded this session. We need to be sure that happens next session. And finally, I couldn't agree with you more about the focus on I-81. We've worked on that for 20 years personally, and strongly support targeted improvements to I-81. The other item I wanted to talk about was a transition presentation. Again, I couldn't be here, the presentation is not online, so I want to be careful how I say this. There's a lot of great things in that report. I was honored to be a part of that transition team. It's got a lot of emphasis on not only economic development, but connecting Virginia, pursuing multimodal, clean alternatives for transportation. And one of the most important reasons for this is greenhouse gas emissions. Number one source is transportation. However, there's one item that I just saw a news piece in the paper this morning that shocked me, and it's reported, Northam Transition Panel pushes for new Potomac crossing. So again, I couldn't be here yesterday. I want to make sure not to cast anything on how this might have been presented to you all, but I was shocked to see that. The transition team did not push for or endorse any of those projects that were on that list, Appendix B, of the transition team report. That list was a compromise, and what we said in the report was, the Policy Council also discussed a number of potential transportation projects farther out in the horizon that the Northam administration could consider. Potential projects could consider. That is not an endorsement. Hopefully, again, John Milliken, Amy, they did a great job of running that team. Hopefully they made it clear that might have been his personal opinion, but the way it's being reported is that that was a recommendation or being pushed for by the transition team. That is not correct. As many of you know, it's a very controversial issue. There are other items that are on that list that, again, it went on as a compromise. They're very destructive and very damaging. There are better options, specifically on the Potomac crossing, including improving the Metro crossing and American Legion Bridge. So that's a debate for another day, but I just want to make sure everyone is clear, including hopefully the press. This was not endorsed by the transition team. It was identified as a potential project that could be studied. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry that you weren't here with us yesterday. I will start with one of the comments you made about transit. We realize that at this moment there's no funding for the statewide piece in transit. We talked about the fact that the prioritization process for capital is part of the Metro funding bills going through the General Assembly. But one of the our priorities during the rest of the session is to address that. And so at our next CTB meeting, we hope to have an outline of how to proceed going forward with transit. So anyway, we'd like to have that plan in place. Secondly, I do want to make sure that the context with which a third crossing was mentioned yesterday was in a report from a transition team that focused on transportation, and the page upon which the third crossing appeared, it states new major initiatives to explore. And it was their recommendation to the governor's administration for projects for us to explore, to look at, many of which have been on the table for a long time, that we would like to address. I will say that it was in context with Interstate 81, the widening of 64, the third crossing in Hampton Roads, improved north-south connectivity in Northern Virginia, VRE extensions, 58 in Hampton Roads, American Legion Bridge, and the DC to RVA higher speed rail effort. So it was presented in that context that it was one of the ideas that came out of the transition policy team that was presented to us and to the governor as an option for us to explore. And it certainly has been an area that has received attention over the years, and it is certainly something that we would want to investigate, or how do we address the issues regarding the congestion crossing the Potomac? I mean, I think, you know, finding ways to do that, perhaps in new, innovative ways that we haven't even considered in the past. So I just mentioned that that was the context, Mr. Pollard, with which that comment and that particular project was mentioned. Is there anything else? Yes, sir, Mr. Williams.
Just to share with you, the entire time we met as a group for the transit funding, the Capital Advisory Commission, I expressed to him in the first meeting, and I know Jennifer got tired of hearing it from me, but that WMATA was going to swamp.
I'm sorry?
The WMATA issue was going to swamp the transit issue.
Yes.
And it is exactly what has happened. The trigger on WMATA has to be this year. The trigger on transit doesn't have to be till next year. So it's, I knew it was going to be a struggle. Hopefully they will still come up with something to get it in position now, so we're not always trying to fix something the day before it breaks. But it's exactly what we anticipated.
Yes.
I mean, it's hard, and I'd sympathize with the legislature. I mean, you've got so much on your plate at once, so much new funding required, and you can only do but so much. So hopefully they'll still come up with a solution, but it may be next year.
And certainly Metro is transit. It is
No,
our
without
mass
a doubt.
transit system.
I'm talking about WMATA and
yes, and so there is no doubt. I'm not ready to say we won't come up with something yet.
Not suggesting you don't. You do that.
But yes, it is a priority. We knew the urgency of Metro in this session, and I believe that we are very pleased that both the House and the Senate, Republicans and Democrats, have acknowledged how important Metro is to Virginia. I will also say that every transit agency in Virginia is also incredibly important to the economic development and competitiveness in every region of the Commonwealth. So if there is a way to move something forward this year, I would very much want to do that. But no, it will be a high priority going forward. So thank you for that. And Mr. Pollard, I will let you know that we asked Mr. Williams if he would also help advise us. Okay. Well, I don't know, but there's options on the table. That's what I would say. Okay, with that, we will move into our action items. Oh, thank you. Do I have approval of the minutes?
Move.
Second.
That was very enthusiastic. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Carol, you got that right? Okay. All right. Ms. Snyder?
We need to vote.
Oh, sorry. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, thank you. And one abstention. And to think Mr. Williams complimented me on running a meeting. There you go. Ms. Snyder.
Right away. Went to your head right away.
Morning.
Good morning.
I have one item for you. It's a locality land conveyance. The City of Virginia Beach has requested through resolution the conveyance of real estate for a portion of Atlantic Avenue and remnant properties from previous realignments of Atlantic Avenue. VDOT recommends that the lands be conveyed to the City of Virginia Beach, and I request your approval.
Make a motion we approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Any abstentions? And we're going to get the correct information on the screen as well. Thank you. Okay. Let's see. Maintenance Division. Good morning.
Morning. Secretary Valentine, Commissioner, CTB board members, good morning. I have one decision briefing before you today from the Carroll County Board of Supervisors, Salem District, commemorative naming of State Route 52, Carroll County, from the North Carolina state border to the White County line as the Veterans Memorial Highway. The Carroll County Board of Supervisors acknowledges the debt that society owes to veterans who purchased with their blood our enjoyment of liberty and self-government, and they desire that all of Carroll County citizens understand that veterans of every generation in conflict deserve gratitude and respect as they have defended our sacred values of freedom and justice. Carroll County seeks to support the reintegration of veterans back into civilian life and strengthen the democratic process and encourage citizens to play a responsible role in their government. VDOT supports their request.
Susan?
Chair, just a comment, and I could be wrong. Some of the folks have been here a long time would remember. I think we named every interstate highway in Virginia the Veterans Memorial Highway at one point. So it's great to continue to honor our veterans. There's certainly nothing wrong with adding to it.
I wasn't even aware of that. Thank you for...
I'm fairly certain that's the case. Ward Armstrong did it.
Aw. An old colleague. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Pryor?
Morning, Secretary Valentine, members of the board. I have 2 items for you today. The first is the addition of 3 projects to the 6-year program. They are all funded with funding that is not subject to Smart Scale, and they are all fully funded. I recommend your approval.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
The second item is our normal monthly transfers of surplus funds from completed projects to scheduled projects, and I recommend your approval.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Lawson?
Morning. The item I have before you this morning is related to the 64 Express Lanes project in Hampton Roads. You may recall back in September of last year, Mr. Brule made a presentation to you about some transit services that were intended to be enhanced and in that area to be supported by toll revenue. What was anticipated in the beginning is about $1 million of initial investment, capital investment, to get the program started. As you know, the facility just began operations in terms of collecting tolls on January the 10th. At this point, obviously, there isn't toll revenue to support the effort, so the intent is to advance $1 million, up to $1 million from the toll facility revolving account to support the initial startup of the transit services, and that $1 million would be repaid out of toll revenues in the future as the facility is producing revenues above its operating cost. So with that, I will take any questions or ask approval.
Make a motion we approve.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. Good morning, Ms. Brown.
Morning, Madam Chairman, members of the board. I have one action item for you this month. Action item number 6 is a request for recreational access funds. This request was submitted by Louisa County and supported by the town of Mineral. The project is located in the Colpepper District. The town has provided a resolution supporting this project. The proposed project will provide access to proposed new recreational facilities owned and operated by the town of Mineral. The 13.5-acre recreational area will be accessed by a new roadway off of East 6th Street. The project is estimated to cost $124,000. The Colpepper District has concurred in the estimate. The project will be designed and administered by VDOT. We have consulted with the Department of Conservation and Recreation, and they have indicated their support for the access and designation of this site as a public recreational area. We request your approval and the request of $124,000 of recreational access funds.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. Ms. Keene, good morning.
Good morning, Secretary Valentine, members of the board. I have 4 action items for you today. All are limited access changes. First one is for Salem District. It's on the I-81 corridor, northbound and southbound between exit 141 and 143, located in the county of Roanoke. We're requesting modifications to the limited access to accommodate an auxiliary lane being added in both directions. A public hearing was held November 14th, 2017. The proposed project and limited access change is supported by the County of Roanoke, and FHWA provided their approval in January of 2018. The total cost is $62 million for both projects. I request approval of the limited access change.
Second.
Any further discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Pardon me? Good morning. We missed you yesterday, sorry. Thank you.
Right, the second item I have for you is in Culpeper District. It's the Brandy Station Park and Ride reconstruction to expand the park and ride lot at US Route 15 and 29 and Route 663 with a new facility to provide an additional 95 parking spaces. The modification is to the limited access control along Route 685 to expand the park and ride. Posting of willingness was advertised between November 7th and November 22nd of 2017. Public outreach included mailing letters to residents, businesses, and posting a sign on site. No request for public hearing was received. The proposed project and limited access change is supported by the county administrator of the County of Colpepper. The total cost is estimated to be $900,000 for the modification to the park and ride. And I hereby request approval by the CTB for the limited access change.
Moved. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Right. Third item I have for you is involving the hot lanes in the city of Chesapeake as part of the high-rise bridge project. We are asking for modification along Interstate 64. The design public hearing was held at the Deep Creek High School in Chesapeake in October of 2016. The project is endorsed by the town manager in the city of Chesapeake in November of 2016. The Hampton Roads Transportation Accountability Commission, HR-TAC, has endorsed the project in a letter dated June of 2016. The limited access change was approved by Federal Highway in a letter dated January 5th, 2018. The total cost for this project is $600 million, and I hereby request approval of the limited access change.
Make a motion we approve.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
The final action item I have for you is in Bristol District on Interstate 81 at exit 17 and Route 75. As part of this project, Gravel Lake Road will be reconstructed along the frontage road and located parallel to I-81 and exit 17 northbound off-ramp. This project is located in the county of Washington, and the modification is for the limited access along 81. The location and design public hearing was held at the Virginia Highlands Small Business Incubator in November of 2017. The project was endorsed by the town manager and the town of Abington in December of 2017. Federal Highway approved the changes in a letter dated January of 2018. The total cost for this project is $21.2 million, and I request approval of the limited access change.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank
I
you.
wonder if Mr. Fraley's watching all this limited access change.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, land use, good morning.
Morning, Secretary, members of the board. I bring before you a request from the County of Buchanan for the abandonment of a previously discontinued portion of Route 460. This is in the Bristol Construction District. There was a willingness posted and no requests for a public hearing were received, and the district staff are in support of this abandonment.
Madam Chair and Board, this is abandonment will not only help the state system, but it's going to be integrated into the county system and be assistance to the county. And with that, I make a motion to approve.
Clarification. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Operations, good morning.
Secretary Valentine, members of the board. My name is Dean Gustafson. This is a motion to an action to approve our statewide traffic operations center and safety service patrol contract. We briefed the board in January. We have resolved all protests with the contract, and the contract is ready for signature. Received verbal approval from Federal Highway Administration. This is a 5-year contract worth $172 million to award to AECom, and we recommend your approval for the commissioner to execute the contract.
Motion. Second.
Second.
Any further discussion? Yes.
Thank you. I just have a question. I may have misunderstood the presentation last month, but it was my understanding that as part of this contract, there was going to be 156 new safety service patrol vehicles. But when I was reading this, I got the sense that was coming, that's not included, or that may be down the road, or has that been a change?
Sure.
My misunderstanding.
Ms. Valentine, Mr. Tunick, the contract does include 147 new vehicles as a part of the contract. There is a transition plan in the front part of the contract. I believe that's what you're referring to. They will be transitioned over the first 6 to 9 months as part of the contract, but there will be new vehicles as part of the contract.
Okay, great. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Anything else? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Donahue. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'm here today before you with a very short cleanup resolution on Smart Scale, and I know when people say that sometimes there's more things in there, particularly in the General Assembly. I promise you that's not the case this morning. This resolution makes 2 very minor changes to the Smart Scale policy you all adopted last fall. What we found out with additional due diligence earlier this year is that the Hampton Roads urbanized area has extended beyond the current TPO boundaries to include small portions of Southampton County as well as the city of Franklin. And Southampton County officials as well as the city of Franklin have contacted us and said they do not wish to be in area type A, which is what the rest of the urbanized area in Hampton Roads is currently located in. Some of you may recall we made a similar exception for Fauquier County and the town of Warrington, who are technically a part of the Northern Virginia MPO, but if you look at Fauquier County writ large, it's extremely rural. And so what we are asking of you today is to make a similar exception for Southampton County and the city of Franklin, allow them to remain in area type D where they have been for the first 2 rounds of Smart Scale, and not move them into area type A where congestion would be the #1 factor and economic development would be 5%. We also make one other technical correction where previously the Northern Virginia Regional Commission, which is a planning district commission in the Commonwealth, we had always intended to allow them to be eligible to submit applications. However, they were not listed in our policy, and they notified us of that omission. And so those are the 2 changes that are included in the policy before you, and I apologize that we did not discover this last fall.
Motion.
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. That was very short. Usually you stand there longer. Good morning, Mr. Salles. How are you?
Wonderful, ma'am. Thank you. This is the time of year when VDOT prepares for the spring with their repaving projects. And so this is a real busy time of year. And as you can see from the ballot, I have 24 projects today to present. There's one traditional bid build construction project and one design build construction project. And the other 22 that I need your action on are the repaving jobs. Secretary, you have expressed concern, and Mr. Commissioner, the same thing recently about the incident of single bids on our paving schedules. This is the time of year when we get most of those. If you have a construction project, usually a re-advertisement, if the bid is over the estimate and you have one bid, is the appropriate response. It's a little bit different with asphalt paving. Two things that you have to recognize right away about asphalt paving is that number one, it has to be made in a plant, and it has to be somewhere, and they're big and dirty and make a lot of smelly exhalations, and so they can't go everywhere. So there's not a whole lot of plants around, and that the material can only be hauled so far because it cures by cooling off. And so you have a distance problem that you have to recognize. So with that in mind, I have asked Mr. Caples to hand out some of the 5 projects that are presented to you that have single bidders, that have first the cost of the low bidder in the left-hand column and the product, and then next to that has that same product in its closest relationship to this project, and it has the price for that. But there's many things that go into an asphalt mix. First of all, you have a lot of mixes. So you have dozens of asphalt products. You have in the teens the number of surface mixes. So you're going to see a lot of designations there for different products, and they all have different prices based on the aggregate that's in them, the type of asphalt, the amount of asphalt, and whether they have fibers in them. There's a whole lot of things that go into it. They're not quite like manufacturing, even though it's being made in a plant. So with that, Mr. Chief, did you want to?
I just wanted to add something. It's not really important to get into the different mixes. We have 2 ways of making comparisons for single bids. One is we have a confidential estimate that stays confidential that I can't really bring in front of you. But what we did differently this time, as Dawn said, was compared to actual bids at the same time in close-by locations that had competitive bids. They weren't a single bidder. And what that does is you go down, there were 5 of them, and it kind of gives us a sense of scale. I would not portray to you that when you have a single bid, you're going to get a better price. 2 bids get you better than 1, 5 bids get you better than 2. But what it does do is give us a sense of scale and proportion. And if you look down those different types of asphalt, you'll see that some were higher in the single bid, but some were also lower. And it also, you'll see that if what they did is they did a compilation by those significant pay items, and you'll find that 3 of the bids were higher, but 2 of the bids were actually lower if you summed them up. So it's very difficult to give an apples-to-apples comparison because there's other things like density of plants and a whole lot of things that we're going into. But we were able to kind of give it a sense of proportion. But with both the confidential estimate and looking at it this way, I wouldn't say you're getting a better price, but you're getting something that's in the fair value range, and that's what we did. So sorry for doing it, but I wanted to kind of break that down in a way that maybe made sense to everybody in a public setting. So, yes, ma'am.
To add the amateur's view, I've been closely associated with the industry for so many years. You know, if you look at where these locations are, they're not in Hampton Roads or City of Richmond. It's the density of the plant. There's not as many asphalt plants because there's not enough work there to support enough asphalt plants. And the cost of doing this work is 100% about logistics. How you can get the material in and how far you have to truck the material out. And this is just the nature of the beast. This is going to happen when you do these jobs. There's no way in the world someone 50 miles away is going to try to compete with something in your backyard. They all make the asphalt for the same price. It's all about the logistics of getting the material in and hauling the material out. And that's why you get this. I know it drives Scott crazy, but that's why you get it. You can't avoid it.
Yes.
So the question I would have, and this is very helpful, thanks. I understand that, as Marty's just said, the issues of geography, the broad expanses between plants. But as I look at Lynchburg, we had a sole source bid there. Are there not any other providers? Are we fairly certain that there's a single source that would be able to provide the quantity and the quality of product that we're looking for there?
There are really only 2 producers that in Lynchburg District. Now, of course, you can get some crossover from the other districts, but physically located in that district that regularly bid. And so you get the competition when the work is close enough so both of them can bid on it. And just so you know, we actually try to organize our work so that it puts as many plants into play as it can. It's not all done by our traditional organization of counties and so forth. So sometimes there's some crossover, and we try to get that located so there is competition. But there's only 2. There's actually only 6 plants in all of Lynchburg District. So not getting a lot of competition is almost expected. If you don't, in Northern Virginia, half of the work of an asphalt plant is to pave parking lots, and there's a Wawa on every corner, and everybody has a paved driveway. Well, we're the primary customer once you get out in the rural areas. So if there's not enough work to support 2 plants, and you have to have throughput, asphalt's sort of like razor blades. You don't care how many razors you sell, it's how many blades you sell, and they need tons through the plant in order to keep the plant running. They're very expensive to start up and stop. So
with regard to this procurement, the other qualified vendor chose not to bid.
In that case, yes.
In Lynchburg.
When you have, well, there's a lot of them where they did get competition in Lynchburg. There's a lot of them that 2 vendors competed. You don't have, but the project's over $5 million, so you don't see the complete list there. We'll be happy to show that to you if you're interested in that. But in most places, there was competition in Lynchburg. In some places, there's not.
Usually there is.
Usually
yes.
there is. Well, in the majority of areas. In some areas, there usually is only 1, just because of the reach of the plants. Some areas, the Northern Neck, for instance, there's only 1 plant out there. So,
yeah, and the other issue is the companies will not bid more work than their capacity. So they're generally going to choose the haul distances where they're most competitive. We did have 1 provider last year that turned down. Now, they were in a high competitive area, but they won more bids, and they turned down 2 or 3. And we got to choose which ones they turned down because they said, look, we're beyond our capacity. So it worked out to the state's benefit and probably their competitors, but they were, and we want them to do that. But in this case, they generally choose the ones where they have a competitive advantage, because if they know they're limited to how much work, they're not going to go to where they don't believe they can compete. So that's part of it as well.
I just really want to thank you both, Mr. Moore and Mr. Siles, because as we were preparing for this meeting, and I knew that there were bids that we only had projects that only had a single bidder, I was asking if there were a way for us to better demonstrate that this is indeed a fair value and what the value is. Very challenging to do, and I just really thank you both for putting this forward and allowing us to see how we arrived at these particular numbers and some of the challenges in some of the districts. So anyway, we at least wanted to address it, and I think Mr. Kaspowitz, among others on the board, are always trying to make this as competitive as possible, and we were trying to bring this in situations where we only had 1 bidder.
It's very helpful, and I appreciate the clarification. And I guess this is an ongoing problem that, I guess there may be ways that we can address it longer term as we look at procurement overall. But thanks for the explanation. It's very helpful.
To add one more, no one knows what the fair value of asphalt is more than VDOT, because they're the largest consumer of it. The companies that are in these single bid geographic areas know full well that VDOT knows what the value is. And if they continue to violate what they know the value is, that would not be a great business model. So I know it's always better when you have competition, but I don't think just because we have a sole bidder that we're being abused. They know they're the sole bidder before they.
And it's a
ever bid.
reoccurring bid cycle. It'll be back next year,
Yeah.
understand. So that helps to attenuate some of the high prices.
One more important point, you'll notice something different this time, and I did this on purpose. You all are only required by law to award contracts over $5 million, so you don't usually see the rejections. I did this time include one rejection. You don't really need to take any action on that. It's not an award function, but I wanted to show that we do reject bids. This was one that actually had 2 competitors, and we're going to reject it because it's in Northern Virginia, and we have 6 normal competitors in Northern Virginia. So we expect to get a good price when we re-advertise. If you only have one bidder, all you do when you reject it, he may lower his bid a little bit, but probably he's going to raise it because now he has a shorter season than he had before. So the technique that we use in our construction projects to reject and re-advertise, hoping to build up more interest, it doesn't apply in this work at all.
Okay.
So.
Just one comment, Madam Chairwoman. In some situations in the supply chain, it benefits an organization to encourage the development of competition by creating structures that invite other infrastructure development. And I don't know if we've ever explored that. I mean, I know in my day job, sometimes we want to have two parties that we can go to be able to make sure that we're keeping folks honest. So it may require some affirmative action on our part to say, look, we want to invite another competitor into this market. How do we create that opportunity such that they are incented to do that so that we have that experience going forward? I know we do that, for example, with regard to meters. We never give all of our meters to one company because we want others to stay in the game. So I don't know if that's a conversation that maybe we can have about, is there a smart way to do something like that, and if there would be a benefit to VDOT in that regard, especially in light of the fact that we're spending more now on this, that we're doing smart scale and we're actually executing projects. We have a long lead as to projects that we know we'll be doing for the next decade or so.
Madam Chairman, we actually are trying to encourage competition. There actually are more, just a few more in the last few years. It's a big capital investment, but we have out 460, an additional plant. We have a producer that's moved out to Colpepper District that never worked there. But the tendency to do that is to go from the denser areas and move out, because if they move into an area, and I'll use Highland County, Bath County, they will never have a plant at 2,000 people there. So what you tend to get is not somebody going out and placing themselves where there's not enough. Some of these have barely enough work to support one plant. So an investor is not going to go put 2 there. What they tend to do is expand, and I'll call it creep out from their base. So it's kind of a slow and painful process, but it is happening because of the amount of work we have in Virginia, but it's very slow.
Thank you.
Along those same lines, Mr. Brown, if I can, we are starting to see now where people that aren't producers are starting to place and compete on these projects. In Northern Virginia, we have 2 small businesses. One of them is a DBE business that don't make their own asphalt, that buy it, but it's economical for them to buy it from somebody else and place it. So we're seeing some of that, but it is in the areas where there's more competition and more work.
Okay. So are you going to be taking us through just how it is in our packet here?
I will, if it pleases the
Okay.
board.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so the first project we have today is Order 296. This is a plant mix in the Salem District. Well, this is one of the ones we talked about. We only have one competitor. It is traditionally, there is only one competitor in this area. We've analyzed the bids, and we think we have a competitive value there. We think it represents good value, and we're recommending it for award.
Risen?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Yes.
Just one more question. And understand the dynamic of limited availability of the resource here, but we tend to break this up by our districts. And so we create a specific geography, and when we then ask the suppliers to bid to that geography, is that the most efficient model in asking for the provision of these services? Might the geography of a plant's capacity be different than our districts happen to suggest? And I just wonder if this is the most efficient model by taking our geographic districts and trying to bid within those districts. And I'm not sure that there is correspondence between the two from an efficiency of delivery perspective on the part of those providers. There may be, but our boundaries are somewhat artificial and self-imposed.
They are, and we do get a lot. I mentioned how many plants are in a particular district, but we get a lot of cross-traffic across the districts. And so organizing them in some other fashion in regions maybe instead of districts is something we have not tried.
I just wonder if in certain cases, if we bid perhaps a district and a half, where we know we have good competition in one district and we took a piece of another district and added that to the requirement, if we might not get competitors coming from the higher availability district to move into and provide competitive prices and establish our own boundaries based on our knowledge of mixed plants rather than the artificial boundaries that we create with our districts. Marty?
I was just saying, I don't think it's like that. I mean, Richmond District goes to Brunswick. If there's a paving job in Brunswick, it's not a Richmond District paving letting. I mean, if Lane has an asphalt plant in the city of Richmond, he's not going to bid that Brunswick job. Somebody that's got an asphalt plant in Emporia probably will bid it. So I don't think y'all restrict the bids just because of the district lines. It's just where the paving happens to be, what district it in, and that's why they report it.
We can look at that, but it's not generally the district lines that determine that. I mean, Northern Virginia's got a lot of competition, but if you go to Stanton, and if you're north of Rockbridge County, you tend to have a lot of competition. But you get into Highland, Bath, Allegheny, you'll have the same thing. So it's generally, and we divide it up smaller than that, usually just because of haul distance to try to get competition within the district. So that's, we try to work at it, but we can look at that to see if there's any.
Maybe even aggregating the requests with differential haul rates would be beneficial.
Sure.
This is definitely going to be a work in progress to see how we can make this more competitive. But okay, so we'll go ahead and, so there is a second on the table? Yes, okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
The second one for today is Order 838. This is the Stanton District. We had, again, one competitor. We've analyzed the bids. We think we have good value. We're recommending it for award.
Brzezinski, oh, I'm sorry. Do you want, Mr. Dixon is not here this morning.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
The second page, the first job is Order 430. This is a Richmond District plant mix. We had 3 competitors. We think we have good value. We're recommending it for award.
Richmond?
Well, so moved.
Any further discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you.
Next job is Order 432, another Richmond District. We had 4 competitors. We think it represents good value, and we're recommending it for award.
Moved.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you.
Order 617, Fredericksburg District. We had 3 competitors. This is a pretty big one. We've analyzed the bid, and we think we have good value. We're recommending award.
No?
Moved. So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed?
Next project is 618, another Fredericksburg District. We had 3 competitors. We've analyzed the bids. We think it represents good value. We're recommending award.
To approve.
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you.
729, this is the Colpepper District. 2 competitors. We've analyzed the bids. We think it represents good value. We're recommending award.
Moved. Second. Any further discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
For 427 is a Richmond District plant mix. We had 4 competitors. we're recommending it for award.
So moved.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Move now to 949. This is Northern Virginia District. 4 competitors, represents good value. We're recommending it for award.
Further discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
For 951, Northern Virginia District, 5 competitors, represents good value. We're recommending it for award.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
For 952, Northern Virginia District, 4 competitors. We're recommending it for award.
Further discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
953, Northern Virginia District, 3 competitors. We think we're recommending it for award.
Further discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
955, Northern Virginia District, 4 competitors. Represents good value. Recommending it for award.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
966, Northern Virginia District, 4 competitors. Recommending it for award.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
N14, Northern Virginia District Plant Mix, 5 competitors. We're recommending it for award.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Next job is N15, Northern Virginia District Plant Mix, 3 competitors. We're recommending it for award.
Further discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
N16, Northern Virginia District, 2 competitors. We think it represents good value. We're recommending it for award.
Any further discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Next job is M34. This is one of our construction projects. This is to construct Oddfellow Road in the town of Lynchburg. We had 7 competitors, so you see the difference when we go to a regular construction project. Even though it requires moving heavy iron, it can be done. And we get good competition on those types of jobs. We think it represents good value. We're recommending it for award.
Second.
Any further discussion? Those in, oh, I'm sorry. Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay, on the next page, Order 321. This is a Lynchburg District Plant Mix. You will notice in the Lynchburg, you'll see Boxley and Adams switching off mainly. And this is one where only Boxley can practically reach it, so it's a single bid. We've analyzed the bid. We think it represents good value, and we're recommending it for award.
Second.
Any further discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
23, Plant Mix in Lynchburg District, 2 competitors. Represents good value. We're recommending it for award.
Second.
Any further discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
33, Stanton District Plant Mix, 1 competitor. We've analyzed the bid. We think it represents good value. We're recommending it for award.
Motion.
Any further discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Order 835, Stanton District, 1 competitor, but we've analyzed the bids. We think it represents good value. We're recommending it for award.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Next bid, you all don't need to really take action on because this is a rejection, but I'm presenting it for your information. But as you can see, we We had 2 competitors, but we think we can get more in Northern Virginia, so we're going to try that one again. And the final job for today is the design build of the Warrington Southern Interchange. As is our practice on the design build, we have 3 competitors to submit bids. Shirley Contracting Company was the lowest bid, and they also gave us a considerably higher technical score. So we definitely think this is good value. We're recommending award.
Moved.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
That's it for today.
Now.
I'll have a bunch next month too, so.
Okay.
One question.
Yes.
On several of the bids, as we approved them, there was some deltas between $500,000 to $1 million that the estimate was under the bid. Is that strictly on the asphalt estimate was based on a lower cost, or why was that delta kind of recurring?
The part that's difficult for us to analyze on these, the product, we know how far to haul it and all of that, but how long it takes to do the physical work, how long it takes to reach the physical location, because some of them are disparate locations over a large geographical area. They're going to be more expensive than some that are concentrated in an area. So when we proportion our money, which is the value that you're seeing there in the estimated construction cost, at the time we're advertising it, it may be different by the time it gets to my folks that actually do what we call VDOT's bid for the work. It's the engineer's estimate, but it really is another bid. So we always really have 2 bids on every job, even if we only get one from a competitor, because I have a group of estimators that mimic what the contractors do. Many of them have worked for contractors, so they know how to estimate work. And so that's what we compare to when we bring them to you and say, we think it represents good value.
Yeah, and the overage will either be made up on an under, on another within the same district, or in contingency. And if we have significant unders, which we have some years, we've actually gone out with additional asphalt plant mix because we need to do more than we actually are funded to do. So.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Kasprowitz, we will just continue to try to make all of this more competitive and transparent.
Appreciate the focus on all of this. Thank you.
Yes, yes. Any new business before the board? One of the things and you may do this, but when we get action items from our meetings, such as, I made a commitment to come back to you with a plan moving forward with transit, whatever that might be, the commissioner looking at how we could bury power lines and perhaps putting that together. When there are tasks that come from our meeting, is it possible to have those sent to us as well so that we all know, what the expectations are, and if you in particular might have an assignment or some work to do, then we all know that we're at least give an update at the following meeting about where we are. Anything else, Mr. Commissioner, Director Mitchell? Okay, and with that, we made it through the first meeting of the CTB under Governor Ralph Northam.
In record time.